In this What's New about Final Cut 10.1, you'll see the new libraries feature. You'll see how the new libraries contain both events and projects. You'll also compare new features with the version of Final Cut previous, 10.0. You'll see other new features of 10.1, and you'll also see a number of undocumented features of 10.1. This new version of Final Cut Pro 10.1.1 has a major change in the library structure where events and projects are added to the library. But overall, there are a number of other very useful additions to make this package very much different from the original Final Cut Pro that was released 2 years ago, to much discussion from the professional community. I have to say that this package as it is now of Final Cut Pro, and obviously future ones that are yet to be produced, are definitely very much professional packages and are very much quicker to edit in than earlier versions of Final Cut, that's Final Cut Studio. So let's look at what is new in this version of Final Cut Pro, version 10.1. The libraries, as I said, is the major change, and to put this in a nutshell, it simply means that your previous events and projects are now combined into one folder or one location called a library. This makes for easier backups and less chance that clips will be lost in their connections and links. In the previous version of Final Cut, files had to be in a folder at the root level of every hard disk, or in the movies folder on the internal hard disk. In 10.1, you can position or locate your events and projects that are now in the library anywhere you wish on any disk, whether it be internal or external, or at any level of those disks. It doesn't have to be at the root level anymore. Where previously you had to quit Final Cut to be able to close an event or a project, with this new version you can simply go to a library, select on the library, you can right click on that library and close the library, or you can come to the file menu and close the library. And if we want to close this one here, which is an untitled one, right clicking on it, close the library, and you'll see that the untitled library has now been removed, and any associated events and projects in that library will also be closed. Now that libraries are made up of events and projects, if we look inside a library here, we can see that there is an event, and within that event we have raw footage, and we also have projects, and the projects have these clapperboard headings, and if we double click this project, it opens it up in the timeline. If we were to double click this project, it would then open that project in the timeline. Projects within the timeline, of course, can be switched backwards and forwards as previously, but what you will notice is that there is no project library as there was in the previous version, that's 10.0 of Final Cut Pro. The project library is now represented in the event with these projects here and not on the left hand side of the timeline. So in fact the only item you have down there now is the index. Events can be moved, so if we take some of these clips here, we can move them from this event to another library by simply clicking on one of the clips and moving it to that library. Now what Final Cut does in this instance is that it makes a copy in the new library of the clip that you had in the previous library, the one you're copying from, and you have a choice of either optimizing that media or using proxy media. You can choose to move or copy projects from one library to another. So if we go to the File menu with a project selected and move here, we can copy that project to a new library or to one of the current libraries. We can also move that project and it will be taken out of the previous library and put in either one of these or a new library. Libraries are now automatically backed up and can be located wherever you wish them to be. So if you come to your preferences underneath the Final Cut Pro menu, under preferences here, under general, you can see save library as backup, so you have a choice of doing that, and you can decide where you might like those backups to go. Now backups are only metadata, so the files are small. You can restore from backups, so if you come to the File menu and go to Open Library, you can then create a new library from a backup. You can duplicate a project by simply selecting Duplicate, Command D, but more importantly we can now create a snapshot project, and this is a project much similar to the Final Cut Pro Studio project duplication, where you could take a snapshot in time of an individual project, just the metadata of that project, and then continue to edit that independently of the previous or the duplicated project. Split clips can now be rejoined. If we look here in the timeline and we split this clip, we can either use Command V or we can go to the Trim menu and blade that clip. At any split you'll notice that there are dotted lines compared to the solid lines of the end of a clip. So a split clip, providing the frames have not been moved, can be rejoined. We can do this by selecting both the left and the right sides of the clip and pressing the delete key, and the split is removed. Or we can select the clip and come up to the Trim menu and join the clips. Audio frames placed in a clip, as previously with the Option key down, we could set audio keyframes and move those around independently. But with this new version of Final Cut, if we select the Range tool and we select those audio frames, we can click on one of them and all of them are moved while they're selected with the Range tool. In the previous version of Final Cut, we could use the fade in and the fade out by simply dragging on this little dot. When the cursor's over that dot, you get a double-sided arrow and you can fade in, fade out. This feature now in the new version of Final Cut is also available in Multicam Clips. That's in clips where the audio components have been extended. Also new in this version, you can now detach audio from a multicam clip, which you couldn't previously do. So I can detach this audio and there is the unattached audio from this clip. Retiming of clips is much more accurate now, and you can insert numerical amounts for your retiming. So if we were to select this clip here, if we look here at the custom retiming, then we can change that to 87%. So we can select forward or reverse direction. Also we can ripple the clip or not, and by rippling it, it means that if we set this to 87%, then the clip is rippled. In other words, you saw it move. If we go back on that now and turn the rippling off and put that at 87% and press the return now, then the clip did not extend, it stayed with the same in and out locations in the timeline. Just the content of the clip was slowed down. The Consolidate feature allows you to consolidate all of the media that may be in different locations, we can consolidate by going to the File menu and consolidating the library, and all of the media related to these projects will be gathered up from your hard disk and put into this library. Now, if in fact all of the media is already in this library, then you will receive this message to say that no files are available to be consolidated because they're in fact already there. Another new feature is that when you import media now into a library, you are able to bring it in directly from any attached iPhone. Can all be added directly from the iPhone into Final Cut without having to go through iTunes. You can now also create custom project resolutions with custom frame sizes. If we decide to create a new project in this library, we can go to the File menu, select New Project, give it a name if we wish, select the Custom button here, and then you've got the choice of these presets, 2K, 4K, 5K, or you can go to Custom, and then you can change this to whatever size you want to, and you can change the rates. Switching from optimized to proxy media is much improved. It used to be under the preferences menu. It's now available under the viewer here. So if we select on this little down arrow here, we can see that we can simply go directly to proxy media or back to optimized media without having to go to the preferences. We can also, and these are new features, select better performance, better quality levels in the timeline from that same location. There is a new title that has been provided in this new version of Final Cut. So if we select on the titles here and search for date and time, there it is there. We can just simply put this in our project, extend it to whatever length we want to, and the date of the clip, when it was filmed, and the time. It's a way for editors to show clients when the clips were filmed. Providing that iMovie and Final Cut are on the same disk, you can now export a project directly out of iMovie straight into Final Cut. So if we were to go to iMovie now, select iMovie and look at this lorry library here, this lorry event, and go to the File menu and send that movie to Final Cut, then now when we look in Final Cut, we will see that it's come directly into Final Cut. So there's the project, there's the media for that project, and here's the project in the timeline. This version of Final Cut was optimized for the new MacPro, particularly for the dual graphics card, so that now 4K playback can be played without rendering. To give you some idea of how Final Cut accesses the multi-cores on the MacPro, let's select this clip here and we will ask it to stabilize. Now if we look at an application called Xscan, we can view how those processes are working. Now you can see that all processes there have been activated in the process of creating that stabilized footage. If we were to look at this clip down here and decide that we wanted to replace it with the footage from this clip here, now they're not necessarily going to be the same length, but we can drag that to this clip, and previously we were able to replace from the start or replace from the end, and the clip would either grow or shorten dependent on the length of what we had selected here in the event. Now we could use a replace with Retime, so it will fit between this point and this point, no matter whether there's more footage here or less footage than in here. So there it is there, and in fact you can see it speeded up the footage by 142%. With this new version of Final Cut, we can now do a roll edit on an audio clip, as opposed to only in the previous version being able to roll edit the video. So if we have a look at this clip in the timeline here and zoom into it, if we select the trim tool, we can roll edit the video as previously, but if we look down here and select the audio clip, you could see that we could roll edit the audio as well. There's a new stabilization feature in Final Cut, and it's called InertiaCam, and this takes allowance of camera motion. So if we look here in stabilization, we see we can have inertia or automatic or smooth cam. And when you set on the inertia, if in fact the footage is stable enough, it will be able to offer you a tripod mode. And notice in this case, tripod mode is faded out. So it's not available because there's too much camera motion in this footage, too much zooming. If we to look at another clip which has been stabilized, and let's go to this one here, this clip, and it's stabilized that clip. We'll just zoom into it a little. And if you look here in the automatic mode, it's allowing us to select tripod mode because there wasn't so much camera movement in this case. So you can see how there's a little bit of movement there. We'll go to tripod mode and you'll see it's rock steady. The functionality of the dock icon of Final Cut has slightly changed. If you click and hold on it now, you'll be able to open Final Cut and add any of these libraries to the currently open libraries. If you hold the Shift key down when you select Final Cut in the dock, it will open with no libraries. And finally, if you select the Final Cut icon on the dock and show recents, then the recent libraries are shown in enlarged format there for you to select from. And those are the new features of this version of Final Cut. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial.